Okay, now I've slid down and we're going to tackle the direct labor variances next on this problem. So the first thing we have to do is jot in the actual rate of what it takes to make a woman's coat and a men's coat, and then jot in the standard rate as well, and we can compute that variance in terms of the hourly rate. So if we go back to the problem, they told us that the standard labor rate is $13.40 and $14.80. The actual rate was $13.25 and $15. So let's jot those in. Actual rate $13.25. For men's it was $15. The standard rate, I'll move the mouse out of the way, $13.40, $14.80. So we have variance now, and I could copy from above, but I'll just do it this way. So we take the $13.25 actual less the standard, and since actual was less than standard, we're showing favorable as negative. Copy this over here. We're 20 cents unfavorable in terms of men's coats. The actual time was, let's find those numbers. What was the actual hours we worked? 1,324.25 to the left of my mouse was the actual time. So we jot in 1,300 and we jot in 24.25. Next we have to compute we have to compute the standard time, but you know what? We're going to need this actual time here, and we're going to need this here, and the standard time we're going to need we'll have to calculate that in a moment here. Alright, so the direct labor rate variance is going to be equal to 0.15 cents per hour times the actual time we used. So 195 of favorable. I'll multiply this across here, and you can see how I did that. It's 485. You can hit the F2, you can see it here, but you can always look up here in the formula bar left of my mouse to see it. Okay, and since that's a positive number, it's unfavorable, meaning that our labor cost us more than what was called for in the standard. Add the 2 across, and we're going to wind up with an unfavorable variance of $290. Okay, so the next calculation we have to come up with is the standard time. Alright, to come up with the standard time, you take the 4,300 women's coats times 0.3, the standard time to make a coat. And if you do that, you'll have the standard time for women's coats. And that comes out to be 4,300 times 0.3 is actually 1,290, and I'll jot that in here. Okay, and then we go back and we would do the same thing for the men's coats, which is 5,500 times 0.45 is the amount of time in hours it takes. So if we copy that, we can jot that in, and we come up with 2475. Now once we have that, we just compute our variances again. So actual time minus standard time, it exceeds standard time 10. That means we had a variance in terms of hours by 10. I'll copy that formula here. We had a favorable variance on the men's coats. Oh, and I've got a, I'm sorry, I got an error here. Let me jump back. I need to copy this formula, 5,500 times 45. I copied the wrong one here. Come on, let me jot it in here. There we go. 2475, which is 5,500 times 0.45 hours per coat. We're using it times the actual quantity they made. 24. I'm sorry, that should be 2425. Hang on one second here. The 2425 goes in the standard. The 2425 is the actual hours used. 2425. So let me just put that in there. And then what happens is you have a $50 hour favorable variance. Now we multiply times the standard rates, 1340 and 1480, and we do our little multiplication. I'm going to copy from right above here. Copy above here, and I got 134 and 740. The 13134 is unfavorable. 740 is favorable. And so since 734 exceeds 134, we're going to be favorable on this line item. And we add the two variances together, the direct labor rate variance and the direct labor time variance, and what we come up with is the total direct labor cost variance, which is favorable to the tune of $316. The last part is what was our total actual cost. And why don't we calculate that next? Okay, so if you look up here, you see how I came up with that. I took the 1325 women's coat actual labor hours times the actual hours used, 1300. And if I grab that, copy that, we can jot in the actual cost of 17,225. We go on back. I'm going to move on down. I did this ahead of time for the purpose of making this video. $15 per hour actual labor rate times 2,425 actual labor hours used. Again, we jot that here, and we've got our actual cost. Then we just need to calculate the standard cost next. Okay, now the standard cost. For women's coats, it should be the 4,300 units actual production times the 13.40 standard rate times 0.3 hours to make each coat. So I'm taking 4,300 coats times 13.4 times 0.3, and I guess I should have done it the other way. 4,300 times 0.3 gives you the total hours that would be required to make a single coat, and then you would multiply it times the hourly rate of 1340. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. My mouse doesn't want to behave. And we would jot that in right there. There's 17,286. And then we do the same thing with the men's coats. 5,500 hours, and again, I probably should have multiplied it times the 0.45 hours next to come up with the total hours used, and then multiply it times 1480, right, I said that correctly, I got myself confused here, times 1480, the standard rate, and we wind up with the standard cost that we would have expected for this level of production. And we jot that in right there. Oh, it's not going to let me. Let me hit escape here a minute. Okay, I've got it on the clipboard now. I can jot it in. Well, at least I thought I had it on the clipboard. We're going to take this amount right here. Just hit enter. 36. I still have the wrong thing on the clipboard. Hang on, everybody. Okay, finally have it pasted in. It's that 36,630, which is, we went through the calculation here. So once we do that, we're going to calculate our final variance. Actual cost is less than standard cost, so I'm going to make this a negative number, right? $61 favorable. Slide over here. I get that message out of the way. I can copy the same formula over here. I've got 255. That's negative for favorable again. So this time when we add a cross, I'll copy this cell, we come up with adding two favorables, so that's a favorable. So direct labor variable, direct labor cost variance, total direct labor cost variance was actually favorable by the dollar amount of $316. I probably should format this, put the formats back the way they should be. Alright, now let's just slide down. And the last question says, why are the standard amounts in Part 1 based on actual production at the end of the year instead of planned production? And of course, that's the whole idea behind flexible budgeting, which is the variance analysis should be based on the standard amounts at the actual volumes we incur. That way we're adjusting for the difference in the volumes. Okay, so the budget flexes with the volume changes. If the actual volume is different than the planned volume, then the budget used for performance evaluation should reflect the change in direct materials and direct labor that would be required for the actual production. That this way, spending from volume changes can be isolated from the efficiency and the price variances. And that's this problem, everyone. Thank you.